Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 30th of January, and joining me on this edition is Steve Withers.
Below me.
And audio reviewer Ed Selley.
Those people used to work here.
Welcome along. It is the end of the month. It's the first month of the year, and it has gone very, very quickly, which doesn't point too well to this year being a long year. I think it's going to be really quite quick. But saying that, it's been a quick month, but the only thing I can think of, really, is CES. Yeah, I seem to have been really, really busy this month, yet I'm thinking back and trying to think, and that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah,
I tend to agree with you there, Phil.
Yeah, I seem to have been incredibly busy without achieving anything, which is always the worst possible combo. But yeah, high times.
That's me on a daily basis. I get to the end of the day, and I know I've been busy, and it's like I've achieved nothing. Right, so we're going to do our best ofs for the month, and we're also going to look forward to February and what we've got coming up. But before we do all that, we have got some exciting competitions, including something that's really, really, really good. So not just Blu-rays, but something that's actually worth winning.
So yeah, in terms of current competitions, we've got two at the moment, and both pretty good. One is the Warner Brothers bundle, which is The Hobbit, Battle of the Five Armies, Inception, Gravity, Pacific Rim, Jupiter Ascending, and 300 Rise of an Empire. All of those are on DVD. The competition runs until the 12th of February. And also, we have a competition to win a Sony 4K Ultra HD TV, courtesy of AO.com. And that's going to be to give it the specific model number, it's the KD43XD80888BU.
Snappy.
Yeah.
Does that have enough in it to be boobs?
The XD80888 will do. 43-inch model 4K Ultra HD TV. And that is running until the 28th of February. So some pretty good prizes there, I think. And those competitions are open to all eligible members and resident in the UK, Ireland, and the Isle of Man.
Do you know what? I might enter the Warner Brothers bundle because it will give me something to watch to fill the significant and unpleasant hole left in my viewing by the announcement from Sky over the last couple of days about the Discovery Channel.
I'm really glad that you're annoyed about this because there's nothing better than an angry Ed. So please rant away.
Right. Well, it would appear that negotiations for a new contract between Sky and by extraction Now TV and Discovery have not gone well. Both sides have resorted to sort of sniping each other over Twitter, like good grown-up multinational institutions. It's fair to say that Sky is sufficiently convinced that they're canning it, that they've got a frequently asked questions section on their website about them canning it, which to me suggests that they don't feel that the chance of a last minute deal is particularly high. Now, I have to admit to being a bit pissed at this because fundamentally what this boils down to, there are two different things in play here, one of which I am part of and one of which I am very much not. The first is with Sky Q, there's been much more of a movement to on-demand and box sets and so on and so forth. And I would be completely happy to acknowledge that Discovery hasn't really got in on that in the way that some of the other channels, non-Sky channels, I stress, have been able to, produce collated content where you can get stuck in, watch a series of something and just crack on. And Sky points to the fact that in terms of linear viewing, which is the old-fashioned term for watching something when it's on rather than recording it and watching it later, Discovery's share of the market has declined. These are all legitimate exercises. I think, for example, it would be unwise of Discovery to have asked for the same amount or as much money this time around, purely because, unfortunately, the nature of everyone's share of the proceeds is declining. However, this being said, the reason why Sky is also on a phenomenal economy drive is because we are throwing now, space program sized amounts of money at 22 mercenaries wandering around a lawn kicking a ball. It is having a detrimental effect on all other programming. because the sums of money involved in paying for it are just astronomical. And I don't have a Sky Sports subscription. I simply don't derive enough satisfaction from the sports that they show. What's cruelly ironic is that when we say Discovery is being canned, it's not just channels that start Discovery. Two of the other channels that are set to go are Eurosport 1 and Eurosport 2. Now, ironically, I do actually watch those. I've thoroughly enjoyed their Alpine sports coverage over the years. Their Tour de France coverage makes ITVs look like it's done by a bunch of 6-year-olds. And crucially, for me, they show the Le Mans 24 hours, unmolested, unhacked about with in real time. So that's going to be knocked off and fall by the wayside. And it doesn't matter what Sky say about, oh, well, we've got these sports. They don't do those sports. They don't cover any of the things that Eurosport did. So they're not providing a replacement. They're simply knocking these things on the head and sort of hoping that you'll just shrug your shoulders and accept it, which I think is an irritating precedent. And as the rights to show football get ever more ridiculously expensive, this is just going to keep happening until such time as hopefully the last remaining sane human beings go, do you know what? Bollocks. This is, I'm not paying. Well, I mean, my Sky sub, admittedly including broadband and phone, so it's not purely on television. I give them £100 a month. And if you're hacking away at the content I actually watch to subsidise the stuff I don't, I'm not going to put up with that indefinitely. The problem that the elephant in the room for Sky, and it's not something they can sort simply by giving us a ritzy new box, is that they are competing now with organisations who sell the same content all the way around the world. Their model is different, their budgets are different, and sooner or later they're going to eat you.
It's also the language that's used in the FAQ, Ed. I just had a quick read of it, and it's very much a case of they're trying to point the finger at Discovery and saying it's their problem, which seems really quite defensive and quite strange, the wording in their FAQ, to be honest. It's as if to say, look, we're the good guys.
I have to be honest, I wouldn't have let that out into public consumption, written that way out. But that, I don't know. Maybe that's because I've done technical support for companies which aren't run by Rupert Murdoch. I don't know. It's just, as I say, it is irritating. I think Phil and I have derived considerable satisfaction over the years from some of the programs shown on Discovery. And yeah, there's no, pointing to saying, oh, well, we've got this, and this. Yeah, I wasn't watching that, and that because it wasn't that good. Sorry guys. I have to be honest. If Nat Geo were to follow down this particular rabbit hole, we'd be reaching a threshold point where I just have to say bollocks to it. It's just not worth it.
Well, I said bollocks to it quite about 18 months ago now, if not a bit longer, and I haven't looked back. I don't miss Sky one iota because the sports just got too expensive, so I stopped watching that. And I was getting a bit fed up of football anyway, and I think quite a few people are getting a bit fed up of football now. I mean, I still watch grassroots stuff when it's on. I'll still watch the Scottish example of football, if you can call it football. But at least it's still entertaining. The thing is, it really gets my goat nowadays watching the Premier League and thinking, well, these guys are getting spent. They're getting paid so much money that it's just, football is a working man's sport. It always was. It always was the working class sport. Nowadays, there is no resemblance of what it used to be, unless you go and look at the lower leagues, where I think they're more entertaining. I get more satisfaction out of watching Channel 5's coverage of the Championship these days, because the games are just so much better. There's more entertainment there because they're not worrying about win bonuses that are several million quid and so on when you're talking about the top clubs, and it just gets really, really stale. And I lost interest a long time ago. So the only things I really would watch on Sky are the Discovery type channels, documentaries, that kind of thing, and it was just too much money for me, so I swapped over to BT. I got a deal when I went with BT Broadband, and it has Discovery and Nat Geo, and they're adding channels all the time. So in terms of getting what I want to see and recording what I want, I can do that with BT, and it's costing me a third of what it was costing me on Sky. Yeah,
I mean, my hope is cynically that either Amazon or Netflix will spring for some of the higher profile Discovery channels as content, just grist for the mill.
Yeah.
And I suspect that is what will happen for some of them. I mean, I will be the first to admit that a number of Discovery's programs, they are documentaries in name only. The channel has slid. I mean, not quite so badly as the History Channel, which is now presumably named for irony purposes.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, Discovery is light entertainment dressed up with a very small factual core. But hopefully that means that it's a prime candidate for either Netflix or Amazon to go, do you know what? Let's get fast and loud.
Yeah, totally. And that starts again on Monday, by the way, if you haven't already noticed, Ed.
Well, it'll start. I'll get one episode.
But yeah, that starts again on Monday. But interestingly, the three back staff that used to be on what was it, the Mythbusters. Yeah. So you had the two main guys, Adam and what's his face, and then you had the three other people who did bits and pieces. Grant, yeah.
Else.
Well, I noticed on Netflix that they now have their own series on there, brand new series on Netflix with those three doing the same type of thing that they did on Mythbusters, and I watched the first two episodes and really quite entertaining.
Well, there you go.
So there you go. That's people moving across there and doing that kind of thing. Has your car turned up yet, Ed?
No, it's supposed to turn up next week. I've got a registration number for it, so that's got to be something.
So when
that's all they've got, Ed's a registration number. There's no car.
You can't register in a fictional construct, Steve. So it exists in one shape or form.
Yeah, well, you need your VIN. You need your VIN number. Once you get your VIN number, you know it's been built or is being built. But the thing is, when you spoke to us last week, it hadn't been built.
No, not as far as we could work out. The actual build date for the car was the 18th. Which meant that the original estimate of delivery to dealer on the 11th seems at best optimistic. But no, I've got a VIN number. I just haven't committed that to memory because it's quite long and I'm quite thick. But I do have a registration number. So there is that. And I was saying just before we started recording, I've been occupied with trying to get the old car ready for sale. Which has been tremendously exciting.
It's a cutthroat business, car sales and all the rest, and you want to get good car sales. But I think I'd be quite disappointed if one of the forum members, unsuspectingly picked up a Skoda Fabia.
If you are shopping for cars in the Milton Keynes area, a black Skoda Fabia VRS 55 plate, that's probably going to be mine.
So avoid.
Only owners have been my wife and I and Skoda UK in its 12 years of existence. And, it's other than the point where it swallowed its own turbocharger, it's never broken down on us. And, I have then gone to the effort of replacing all of those bits at not inconsequential expense. So mechanically, it's pretty sound, and I'll be interested to see what it looks like after it's deep clean, because it might apparently still be black.
Mm-hmm. But I guess, Ed, if we give you 20 quid, we could give it away as a competition prize, couldn't we?
I'd need fractionally more than that. But if you do want to have a whip round to win my old car, I am open to that as an idea. I think that's quite impressive. One thing I am definitely going to do, if I sell it face to face, if they give me the number I want, I'm going to say, hold out your hand.
You've just bought yourself a Skoda Fabia. Yes, there's lots of people now scratching their head, Ed, that don't watch Wheeler Dealers and haven't got a clue what we're talking about. But anyway, let's move on to
February. They never will.
Let's move to speakers first and get Ed's impression on a brand which used to be really famous, Ed, and then disappeared for a little while, but they're back with a vengeance. Yes,
this is the return of Mission. Now, it's important to stress for all sorts of reasons that Mission didn't go away. They had the company as it existed was sort of split up and hived into different bits. The Mission brand name was purchased by the International Audio Group. The thing is, International Audio Group already own quite a few speaker brands. They have Wharfedale, they have Quad, they own Castle as well, although they don't do a huge amount in the UK with that. So the early attempts to do Mission speakers as IAG, there was a sense that it wasn't quite the identity that there was with the Mission speakers of old, the classic sort of equipment I was alluding to in the review, the 700 series and so on and so forth. It's pretty much as if someone at IAG has gone, right, enough of this. It's time to do something a little bit more a bit more bespoke. So the LX series of speakers they first appeared at the Bristol show in 2016, so quite a long time ago, but they didn't appear on sale until much more recently. And the good news is that delay has been spent making them quite ridiculously good. The LX2, the review is on the front page at the moment, is a £160 speaker, and it took a bit of time to reach this conclusion because it's a big statement. But at the moment, that is the best under £200 stereo speaker that money can buy. It is ridiculously good. Yes, it's not particularly appealing to look at. There are some slightly less, austere finishes. There's white and a wood finish, but ignore that and just listen to them, and they are absolutely sensational. This is everything really that a Mission speaker should be. It's powerful. It sounds bigger than it is. It just tackles pretty much anything you throw at it with a real sort of sense of refinement and drive, and it looks like a Mission as well. It's got the main driver over the tweeter. It's an absolutely peerless product, and one that I am hugely fond of. It is absolute, something that I am. We've got a long way to go in 2017, however fast it's going. But it's I suspect when I do my roundup in 11 months' time, that'll be one of the products that really stands out, because it is genuinely excellent for not a lot of money. And there's very few systems where you aren't going to be able to attach them and make things substantially better.
And for those who might be thinking about a 5.1 system, they stand up well enough to that?
I imagine so. At the moment, we don't know. The centre speakers are yet to be in sort of mainstream availability in production, but based on the performance of the LX2, this could be an absolutely cracking compact 5.1 system. And as soon as we have got access to the centre speakers, I intend to try and find that out for you guys.
All right, so that's the Mission LX2. How much are they a pair, Ed?
They are 160 quid. As I say, they are an absolute diamond-studded, gold-plated bargain.
I thought you were going to say something else there.
No. I've done some ranting and swearing earlier on. These don't need swearing; they're just ace. If you need affordable pair of speakers, finally, after a very long time, Q Acoustics has got some proper competition.
Good stuff. It's always good to see the budget brands coming back, like Mission and so on, and basically showing that they actually know what they're talking about when it comes to putting these speakers together. Right, so that's the Mission LX2s. The review is up on the website. Go and have a look. Moving on, and let's go to the first OLED TV that was seen in 2017, but it's not a 2017 model.
No, it's not. This TV is the Philips 55 POS 901. If I was choosing model numbers, I wouldn't have chosen POS personally, but then again, they do have a bit of form in this area since the previous generation of LCD TVs were called PUS. This was supposed to come out last year. It has been delayed for various reasons. So although it's coming out in 2017, it does use a 2016 LG panel. And that's easy to check because I've measured the peak brightness, and in its least accurate HDR mode, it will deliver about 750 nits, which is on a par with LG's panels from last year. In the movie HDR mode, you can get about 640 nits, which is not bad at all. And in the ISF HDR mode, it's more about 540, 550 nits. And this TV is Ultra HD Premium certified, and that is the minimum requirement for Ultra HD Premium certification. Otherwise, though, as with last year's panels, it delivers a fantastic picture. I mean, I've checked things like vignetting, and there is none, which is good to see. There's a tiny bit of banding in the just above black, but again, that's consistent with all of last year's panels and isn't something you'd notice with normal viewing material anyway. Uniformity is good. Watching things like football on it, it handles football very well. There was no banding or anything like that to ruin the panning shots as the camera goes backwards and forwards across the green pitch. And overall, very solid. They've obviously picked some very nice panels here. There's only the one screen size, 55 inches, so far as Philips goes. So maybe they've been a bit picky in terms of what they've got from last year. But I think the panel itself is excellent. The performance overall, again, excellent. I've been very impressed with this TV in general. It delivers a fantastic picture. In terms of the measurements, out of the box, it could have been a bit more accurate. There was a lot of red and green in the grayscale and not enough blue in the warm mode. So it was skewing it towards yellow effectively. And skewing the whole color gamut at the same time. And you could try other modes, but once you went to something like normal color temperature, there's just shed loads of blue in the image. So this was the most, or should I say, the least accurate of the three options. There's a 2-point white balance control, so it's actually relatively easy to go in and get a very accurate grayscale. Gamma tracking was good though. That tracked 2.4 very accurately in the nighttime mode, and we could track 2.2 very accurately again in the daytime mode. So in that sense, very good. And once we calibrated the grayscale, the color accuracy was superb. I made a couple of minor tweaks to the hue of yellow, but overall tracking was excellent and the luminance was excellent and really impressive. So, I mean, whilst I could complain that a flagship TV doesn't have 10-point and the CMS doesn't include only covers hue and saturation, there's no luminance control, which that's consistent with all of Philips's models. Otherwise, I think, even given those limitations, it actually delivers a very accurate picture. So I was very pleased with that. And also, and this is important, in HDR, it was also very accurate. It tracked the PQE-OTF extremely accurately within the limitations of its peak brightness, and also tracked both Rec 2020 and, importantly, DCI within Rec 2020 very well as well. So I was extremely pleased with that aspect of the performance. Motion handling was good, as is often the case with Philips TVs, although they do have a lot of processing in there that you can use if you want to. Generally, I end up turning most of it off. A lot of it's either unnecessary or in the case of the motion, obviously it makes it look a bit like video, but it can be a useful thing to use when you're watching sports. So that's worth considering. Design-wise, obviously it's OLED, so it's very thin. It was a bit thicker down the bottom, but it's got a built-in soundbar, basically a forward-firing soundbar, which does sound very good, and uses a kind of feet that have become very trendy these days, 2 feet on either end of the panel. So you will need quite a wide surface to position it on, unless you're wall mounting, in which case you can just use a Visa standard wall bracket. It comes with 2 remote controls. A sort of a stripped down version, which is what I've used most of the time, but there's also the larger remote, which is a dual-sided remote. So again, as with lots of Philips TVs, there's a QWERTY keyboard on the rear, which makes it typing into the smart platform a lot easier. In terms of the smart platform itself, Android TV, as with all their TVs now. And it's very similar in its layout because it's Android based, obviously. Looking at Mark's review of the Shield TV, the NVIDIA Shield TV, kind of very similar approach to that now. It's got recommendations, it's got all the apps, it's got the Google Play Store, it's got settings, a menu section rather at the bottom. It's quite well laid out, it's very intuitive and easy to follow. I have had a couple of crashes. Again, it still remains not the most stable platform I've experienced. It. The same is true with Android on Sony as well. It does sometimes crash. At one point, I couldn't access the settings menus for some reason. I had to reboot the whole TV. So it's still not the most stable platform, but it does at least work quite well when it does work, and it looks quite good and it's very intuitive to use. So that's great. Otherwise, I'm trying to think what else to say. Really.
It does 3D, presumably.
Oh, no.
It doesn't, no. So even though it's last year's panel and would be notionally capable of that, they've decided that, no, they're not flogging that horse.
Yes. Clearly, when they announced it last year, Philips got a lot of stick for the fact it wasn't going to support 3D. It was announced at IFA. So this is how long this has been delayed. It was announced at IFA in September. No 3D. They got loads of stick. What's going on? But clearly, they obviously knew what was coming down the pipe and just thought, what's the point? So, and also, I think, it's worth remembering that when it comes to passive 3D, you have to put a polarized filter on the front of the panel.
Yes.
Obviously, you're dealing with very, very tiny pixels, and it is a very precise and difficult job to align that panel to those pixels. And clearly makes it more complicated, adds to the cost of production, and can result in misaligned panels and returns. So I think given the lack of interest in 3D amongst the mass market, and given the complexity that it adds to the production, I don't blame them for dropping it. And I'm sure that's why LG, given that the most of the TVs they sold last year in terms of OLED would be B6s, apparently B6 outstrips sales of everything else by a significant margin. They've obviously thought, what's the point of all this hassle and additional cost and production difficulties when there's no real interest? So no, it does not support 3D yet. But yes, it's I think as a TV, it's great. It's nicely designed, it's well made, it delivers a great picture, and it sounds good as well. And my only complaint really would be that Android for me still remains a slightly buggy system sometimes, and that's not just on Philips. I've also had that experience with Sony.
So, Steve, the only thing that we need to find out is pricing and availability, and we don't have that yet because obviously the TV's just this second made it to you.
Yes, exactly. I know the indications on pricing last year at IFA were towards the higher end of the scale compared to, if you're comparing it to LG pricing from last year. Whether that will still apply this year, we'll find out. But yes, I will find out for the actual full review. I'll find out pricing, and also I'll try and find out where you can buy it from, because that's always been a bit of an issue with Philips TVs. Quite often they've had some great tellies, but finding them where to buy them has been tricky. So we'll also find that out.
Okay, so that's Philips' first OLED TV, and moving on to Oppo's first UHD Blu-ray player. Yeah,
another product that's been delayed somewhat. It did come out last year as planned, although right at the very end, I think in the middle of December, they finally got it to market. And I think it's fair to say they rushed it. I think they set themselves this deadline of having it in stores before the end of 2016, and they did do that. But I think they did it with a product that was still pretty much in beta testing. If the number of issues raised in the owner's thread and the number of firmware updates so far are anything to go by. Luckily, and thankfully, by the time it's got to review, and I think this may be the reason why they delayed review samples for a while, and the next shipment of manufactured units are going into the stores, they've cleared up most of the issues that they had initially. I still have heard reports of owners having certain problems. There's been issues with dropouts and with lip sync, particularly.
It's mainly compatibility issues that we're talking about here. So
yeah, I think that's the case, because in my case, I can certainly say initially I did have issues with dropouts. I had it set to auto on the audio output, and I switched it to bitstream, and that got rid of that problem for me. So that might be something worth trying if you are having problems with dropouts. But yeah, I think we are looking at. I mean, I think it's worth remembering these are incredibly complicated products that have to work with a load of other different products using a connection, HDMI, which, let's be honest, is not the most reliable sometimes and can add its own issues and complexities.
Let's just be honest, it's shit, and it always has been.
Yes. So I think to rag on it at Oppo when they're trying their best to deliver a product that can work with everything through a less than reliable connection is a bit unfair. And they are a smaller company; they haven't got the scale of some of the other companies, and the chip they're using in this player is custom built with MediaTek. It's not the other players that are on the market at the moment use basically off-the-shelf TV chips. This is a custom-built system on chip designed specifically for Ultra HD Blu-ray. So it's going to be a few teething problems. It's going to take time to get it perfect. But I can certainly say, in my experience, I've got a lot of Ultra HD Blu-rays and I've watched a lot on this player. I didn't have any problems with lip syncing. I didn't have any problems with HDMI handshaking. I didn't have any problems with dropouts after I switched that input. And the playback for me was great. All the discs played first time, no problems at all. So my experience has been very good. I know from reading feedback, some people have had issues, and other people have also had a very good experience. So, I guess it is, as you say, Phil, equipment compatibility issues rather than necessarily the player itself. In terms of the player, if you're familiar with Oppo, then you'll know what to expect really here. It's got the same basic chassis and layout as the previous generation of Blu-ray players, the 103. This is the 203, the UDP 203. And it's well made. It's got a nice big old school full size chassis, solid metal build. You do get a feeling you're buying something that's quality here. In terms of the remote control, that's had a slight. It's still basically the same, but it's had a slight bit of refinement to it. They've dropped a few buttons they don't need. They've added a couple of other buttons like an HDR button that will turn HDR on or off. It's a bit pointless really, but I guess you can play with it. Also, perhaps more importantly, when you pick it up, it's motion sensitive now, so it basically lights up as soon as you pick it up. That is very handy in a darkened home cinema. In terms of the connections at the rear, you've got two HDMI outputs. One is video and audio, and one is audio only. So the idea obviously is if your receiver or processor does not support HDCP 2.2 or HDR, you can send the audio to your receiver or processor and then the image to the display. Or if you've got one that does pass it, then you can just use the one output and go straight to your receiver or processor. In terms of disc playback, this is a universal disc player, so it plays Ultra HD Blu-ray, 2D Blu-ray, 3D Blu-ray, DVD, DVD audio, SACD, and CD. Excellent, and all played fine for me. So again, excellent. If you're playing SACD, it will output DSD directly to your receiver or processor if it supports that, which mine does, and it did. So overall, playback-wise, I thought it was great. I mean, it's kind of being very familiar with Oppo, it was what I expected. The menu system is essentially the same as previous generations, with a few additions, obviously, to reflect the fact it now plays back Ultra HD Blu-ray. The home page has had a makeover, and it's quite attractive with a series of images for each different option. The big issue with this player is there are absolutely no streaming services on it at all. There's no Netflix, there's no Amazon, there's no iPlayer. And I know people are going to complain about that because certainly on the previous generation, the 103, for example, that had Tidal, that had iPlayer, that had Netflix. Oppo have never been great in terms of supporting streaming services. I think it's probably because they're a smaller company. They're further down the list in terms of negotiating these contracts and deals. They started off with the 103 with very little, but did add things over time. Things like having Tidal actually is great. So I'm hopeful they'll still add things on this over time, but initial platform is very bare bones. Basically, you can use it for connecting to your own network and streaming your own content, but that's about it. So
presumably, Steve, though, I mean, this as a problem is with specific regard to projector owners, because for the most part, almost any television that you're going to be connecting this device to would have your back in terms of streaming service support anyway. Yeah,
correct. And as a projector owner who had an eye on this player, Steve, I'm looking at the £649. Where is the USP on this machine? Because if it's a Blu-ray player, it's not going to have that different a picture to any other Blu-ray player. No. So where is the USP for this machine?
I think if you're looking for USPs on this one, you're obviously going for, and this has been the case with all of Oppo's players, to be honest. I mean, they're always more pricey than the competition, sometimes significantly so. You're looking at build quality, you're looking at universal playback. So if you want something that does play DVD audio and SACD, this is probably the option. And one of the big features has always been that they're very easy to modify for region-free playback. Now, that's not an issue with Ultra HD Blu-ray because there is no region coding on that. But if you want a player that will also play multi-region Blu-ray and DVD, it is very easy to do that on an Oppo, and that's always been one of their big selling points. But you're absolutely right, Phil. If you look at the competition currently, and there's been a big drop in price on this one, you can get the Panasonic UB900 for about 450 quid. That's £200 less than the Oppo, and that does. Well, okay, it doesn't play SACD and DVD audio, but as an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, it's absolutely equal of the Oppo. The only thing the Oppo does a couple of things that the Pani doesn't, that some people might find useful. One of the things it does do is it gives you the option to select the video depth output, so you can select 8-bit, 10-bit, or 12-bit. And I know that people with older 4K TVs have had issues with banding using the Panasonic because that always outputs at 12-bit. And that's caused issues. So if that is something you've got a problem with, then you could select 10-bit and output the 10-bit disc as 10-bit rather than outputting it as 12-bit. So that's one thing that might be useful. Also, you can turn HDR on and off. Now, that's nothing that's new, but you can do that on the Pani, and the Samsung will do it automatically. Your TV is not on HDR TV. What you can also do is select strip metadata. That will strip out the HDR metadata but output Rec 2020 color space, but currently doesn't work properly. The image is very dark and the blacks are crushed, so that's still a work in progress. But that might be useful for people with projectors who want, say, 10 or 12-bit 4K and Rec 2020, but don't necessarily want the HDR aspect because of the brightness issue. So when that does work properly, that might also be useful. But if you're looking comparisons with the Pani, it's hard to justify an extra 200 quid when the Pani is available for 450 and is an absolutely superb player, obviously THX certified. I've been using one, you've been using one now for nearly a year. And it hasn't put a foot wrong in terms of playback. It's been an absolutely solid player that has handled everything that I put into it in terms of discs, and I've watched quite a lot of Ultra HD Blu-rays on it. So yes, perhaps worth mentioning also on the Oppo is it's a very good scaler and it can be used as a video processor because there was an HDMI input in the back as well. If that was something that might appeal, but you're right, Phil. Price wise, I think they priced it a bit toppy at $649.
Okay, so that's two new shiny products that Steve's been looking at, and the reviews will probably be up by the time you listen to this podcast. The OLED TV might be Tuesday or Wednesday.
But the Oppo's already up.
But the Oppo's already up, so yeah, you can go and read that one. Right, so let's move things along, and it is the end of the month, so let's go to Ed for his album and vinyl release of the month. And if you have been paying attention to any streaming services, your highlights on there as well, please, Ed.
Right. Good news is that album and vinyl are one and the same. this month because it's a new album out this month and it's got a good vinyl release. This is a French artist called VIII, and this is his fourth album, in fact. It's called Voyager. And, well, I mean, you can listen to his entire back catalogue on various streaming services. It's all there. Essentially, he's part of the magnificently named French record label Ed Banger Records. So, broadly speaking, you probably know what to expect on this. It's music to lose your driving license to, but it's a bloody good listen. A lot of fun. And it's been given a very well sorted and quite aesthetically pleasing vinyl release as well. If you're not a fan of electronic beefy music, then ignore it. It's just not going to deliver anything that's going to appeal to you. But if you're just after something which just grooves, puts you in a better mood, and I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to it a couple of times now, that would be my pick for both my album of the month. You can buy it in all different sorts of media, not just vinyl, and you can listen to it on all the streaming services. If you're after something a little bit different, actually, let's be honest, a lot different, this is a curious tip. This is something I would urge you to check out on a streaming service first and then have a think about what you might like, is the second album by a band called Sohn, S-O-H-N. It's called Renan, and it defies easy description, but if you sit down and listen to it as an album, rather than picking and choosing tracks, you actually just treat it as a body of music, I think it's really good, and it has grown on me, because the first time I listened to it, it's like, I'm not sure about that. But then I found myself listening to it again, going, do you know what? This is good. Really getting into that. It's I can't accurately pigeonhole what genre of music it is. It's possibly electronic in so much as there are electronic instruments in it, but it's not really music to dance to. It's something different again. I've really enjoyed listening to it. It's a grower. But it's a bit odd. So it's on. I've checked. It's on Tidal. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Music. I'm sure if it's on those, it's on all the others as well. Have a listen and see what you think. I've really enjoyed it. But my album of the month is Voyager by the VIII. Just that's brilliant fun, and I look forward to Phil being sent to prison as he listens to it in his Mustang.
That or a spin it round or wrap it round a lamppost going sideways round a roundabout.
Well, the good news is, Steve and I were checking this out. That brilliant 2-star NCAP crash safety rating. The good news is that you, as the driver, you've got a 76% chance of avoiding injury. It's only if you've got passengers, or God forbid, if you hit someone, they're dead.
Yeah, it's better. You don't look at those things when you buy the car. The problem with NCAP is that it's now all electronic safety devices, and the Mustang just doesn't have them. That was one of the reasons why I bought the Mustang, was it was agricultural. When you look at it compared to the Audi, because the Audi bored me to tears, because it did everything perfectly, and you could put your 94-year-old granny in there and she'd be able to drive it 100 miles an hour easily. That was the problem with it. Whereas the Mustang, you take your chance.
And come the ensuing Trump-based apocalypse, you will be Mad Phil, warrior of the Northern Wasteland. That's
it. Me and the other Pony Club members will be still be in action. I said that to somebody the other day. I said, I joined the Pony Club, and she's like, I didn't know you rode horses. I said, no, Mustang Pony Club. Right, so that's Ed's album and vinyl releases for the month, and as we are end of the month, Ed, what have we got coming in February?
Right, it's been a bit of a confused month, because many of the items I was originally supposed to look at in January have gone back a month, because it's all been a bit confused post-CES. But in the tank, ready to go on AVForums, is a look at PMC's latest stand mount loudspeaker, the 2521. Slightly confusing terminology, but it's essentially one of the most radical redesigns of a PMC loudspeaker there's been in about 10 years. So, that should be, I hope, of interest to you. Then in terms of stuff I'm frantically working on at the moment, because it's the 27th of Jan when I'm recording this, we've got the newest version of Oppo's portable jack and headphone amplifier, the HA2 SE. There is a particularly innovative piece of multi-room audio from a company called Mosaic. There is a one-stop headphone and amplifier solution from Sennheiser called the HD650 Groove. And last but by no means least, we're having a look at an NAD amplifier. And I'm pleased to report that, like proper NAD amplifiers, it's grey. However, that's where the similarity to old NAD amplifiers ends. It's a really, really quite impressive product. So I won't say any more than that. I don't want to spoil the surprise. But yes, and then coming up, we've got all sorts of stuff. We've got some. I've got some quite pricey but rather spectacular loudspeakers coming from Monitor Audio, and yeah, I'm going to be a busy boy. Put it like this as well.
Okay, cool. For myself, I'll probably only get a chance to look at one thing, but it's an interesting thing in next month, and that's the TW9300 from Epson. We absolutely loved the 7300, so I don't see any bad issues coming up with that one. I think it'll be another cracker of a projector. We are talking with JVC about their latest projectors, but we don't know what's going to happen just yet, because we have been pushing them for the Z1, Steve, to get that in. It's one of these things that it's because it's such an expensive unit, and we only review retail samples. We will not touch pre-pro items. It's taken a little longer than we thought it's going to take to get that one in for review. But there should be the new models, the new consumer models to replace the X5000 and X7000. They should be in end of the month, hopefully. But we will be getting a look at them as soon as they are available for review. And Steve, what have you got lined up?
Well, I think we mentioned it last week, but I'm expecting Russell to come around with some gigantic speakers for me to check out. I've also got waiting in the wings the latest Atmos-enabled soundbar from Samsung. So we've already reviewed the K950, HW K950, which was their full sort of 5.1.2 setup. This is the 850, so it basically is a single soundbar. There's no wireless rear speakers, but it does have upward firing drivers as well. So basically what you're going to get is a 3.1.2 Atmos solution. So it's a slightly cheaper, it's slightly easier to install Atmos solution for those who want a bit of overhead action but don't necessarily want speakers behind them. So got that coming up as well. And then hopefully, Phil, as you say, it very much depending on whether they can get hold of a sample, the Z1. I've bought a forklift truck. I've widened the doors. I'm ready for it whenever they can get one to me.
Right, okay, so that's all coming up in February. It's a short month, but we are on the road as well. So as of, is it next week? It will be next week. You're off to the Sony trade show, Steve?
We'll get to see Sony's complete lineup of TVs. So obviously the A1 that we saw at CES and the XE93 and 94 that we also saw, but we'll also get to see the rest of the range, which will be interesting. And of course, they've got their new Ultra HD Blu-ray player, which won't support Dolby Vision, although some of the TVs will. And we'll get a look at their new Atmos, Dolby Atmos in supporting soundbars. So quite a lot there from Sony next week.
Yep, and then middle of the month we have the traditional trip to Germany for the Panasonic convention. Yet again, we'll get to see the full lineup of their TVs for the UK, UK specific models as always, and there will be some surprises, I think, that will get announced. So keep an eye out for that, because there's some interesting stuff there. And then it's the next again month that you're off to Madrid, isn't it? Yeah,
that's in March. That'll be for the new Philips lineup, which hopefully we'll actually see this year. Be interesting to see whether they've got anything else lined up in terms of OLED, because obviously, as I mentioned earlier in the show, the POS 901 was actually meant to come out last year, so that's been delayed slightly. So it'll be interesting to see whether they're going to be doing more OLEDs and maybe some different screen sizes as well, because it's only the one screen size at the moment. So that'll be interesting. And also, I noticed that at CES, Philips. Now, I know Philips is a very complicated brand, lots of different companies owning the brand in different territories, so it's not always easy to tell what the hell's going on. But the TVs at CES were supporting Dolby Vision, so it'd be interesting to see whether that's planned to be rolled out in this country and Europe as well.
We do also, Steve and I have our annual trip down to, well, Steve gets to travel 6 miles from his house.
I wasn't forgetting. I was coming on to that next. You're jumping the gun yet again, Ed.
I'm keen.
Yeah,
I'm keen
well,
and bloody cold.
Yeah, that must be It must be the cold that's making you keen, because you're never normally keen. But yes, we're coming on to that. So it is the 30th birthday of the Bristol Sound and Vision show this year, and Ed and Steve are travelling there. Ed will be continuing his vlogging that he was doing from CES, won't you, Ed? And,
apparently.
We'll be looking forward to these video vlogs from Bristol. Because there's lots to see at Bristol that's really quite relevant to a UK audience, whereas in the US, let's just put it this way: at Bristol, there's no reclining massage chairs.
Not that we know of. Although, if there are, be under no illusions there will be regular massage chair updates. I might actually be in the massage chair this time. We'll see how it goes.
And Steve will be covering the vision part, which will take him about 10 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say, based on previous shows, that might be quite short. But however, if you do see two blokes shambling around with backpacks full of batteries and cameras, come up and say hello.
Yeah, I'll be in my full Ghostbuster. So, although that said, I get to use you as a grip this time, don't I?
Yeah, you do.
Excellent.
Don't take the piss though.
No, well, I won't. No, that's fine. But that's heartening. It'll be slightly less spine-ruining than wandering around on my own.
So anyway, that's the the Bristol Sound and Vision show. If you do see the guys walking around, say hello or punch them, or just do whatever you want to do. Okay, so that's a look at what's coming up in February. Let's move on, and it's movie news next. So, moving on to movie news and looking at the listing, Steve, there's not a great deal of stuff that's really interesting coming out, especially at the cinema. Is this the final chapter, or I don't think it will be, will it?
Well, I was going to make a joke about that, because the big release this week is Resident Evil: The Final Chapter, and I was going to say, I bet it isn't. However, bit of confession here. I quite like the Resident Evil films. They're a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. I mean, this is the 6th Resident Evil film. I have all the other 5 on Blu-ray, 3 of them in 3D Blu-ray, and I've also got one of them on Ultra HD Blu-ray. So yes, I quite like them. They're fun. I mean, most video game adaptations are not good. I'd say this is the one exception where it's worked for me personally, and I've found the films to be quite good fun. Mila Jovovich has made quite a good heroine throughout this entire series of films, and they're mostly not all, but mostly have been directed by Paul. Now let's get this right, because there's a couple of Paul Andersons around. Paul Thomas Andersons, in fact. This is Paul P.T. Anderson, as opposed to the one that made Magnolia and Boogie Nights. And you know what? He gets a lot of stick for being not the best film. He's not the best filmmaker in the world, but he's a bloody good filmmaker when it comes to using 3D. So I know that 3D's, maybe on the way out, and some aspects, certainly on TVs, it's definitely on the way out. But, if you are a fan of 3D and 3D Blu-ray and you've got maybe a projector or even a good 3D TV, I've found that his use of 3D has been excellent. Really well done. Really good use of depth. So
I thought you were going to say he's the best Resident Evil director. That's what I thought you were going with that.
Probably is that too. But yeah, the guy's much blind in my opinion. I've liked the films he's done in 3D, and they're always found to be entertaining, even if they aren't necessarily quality. So, whilst yes, I agree, Phil, this may not be the final chapter, although Mila's getting on a bit now to be running around shooting at zombies. I do think I am secretly quite looking forward to it, and I probably will go and see it at the cinema. I'll definitely get it on disc, although I might find it be a bit of an issue this time round, because there'll probably be both the 3D. Sony Pictures haven't been too bad. They've quite nicely, for collectors like me, their releases, if it's been a 3D movie, they have included the 3D Blu-ray along with the Ultra HD Blu-ray. So that's a possibility for this release when it comes out eventually. But I'm looking forward to it.
Can I just, I know that we're teetering on the edge of spoilers here, Steve, but if you've seen all of them, I remember some time ago watching the first, I suppose, 25 minutes of the third one, Extinction. And it was abundantly clear that pretty much all life on Earth was bollocksed. So in terms of where you go from there, it seems, is it me or did they peak too soon? I assumed that pretty much everyone was dead or a member of the undead by the time they got to the third film, and yet they've managed to make another set of them.
They've made 3 more since. Yes, I think the way they get around that problem is the Umbrella Corporation, who are kind of basically the main villains of the film, although obviously there are lots of zombies as well, among other things. The Umbrella Corporation is up to no good. It's a very nefarious corporation with lots of underground facilities, just always provide places for them to go when the rest of the planet's been banjaxed. So you are correct in your assumption, Ed, that the world is generally buggered, but there are always ways around that if you're a clever writer and filmmaker. Some of them are better than others, I have to say. Certainly, a bit like Fast and the Furious, I think some of the later installments have actually been better than the earlier movies. But like I say, I find them to be fun and enjoyable hokum and quite good use of 3D as well.
Yeah,
so if you're a fan of 3D, check it out.
But Steve, we're starting to come to the conclusion that you're not a very good basis to judge what's good and not good when it comes to films. I think we're starting to get to the point now, certainly me and Ed anyway, where we just raise the eyes or roll the eyes back, because whenever you're talking about Ultra HD or films, and you have a very high shit level. I'll just put it that way.
You bought the Angry Birds movie.
Yeah.
You spent real money on the Angry Birds movie.
Yeah. I definitely think an intervention's going to have to be done at some point this year. We're gonna have to get hold of The Rock and make sure he's available, and we'll have an intervention.
But the thing is that he'll say, "Steve, stop buying all the 4K films except for the ones that I'm in because I'm great."
Yeah, quite. Doesn't really help me. You make so many buddy films every year that's most of them.
Yeah. We'll need to find someone else that speaks to Steve at some level or another. But yeah, we'll have to work on that because it's becoming a problem.
I'm looking at Blu-rays here, Steve, and struggling to pull one out that I would actually go and watch or make the time to watch. I think the only one is Deepwater Horizon, but then again, it's Marky Mark in it. So
it's true, it is Marky Mark in it. Now I watched Deepwater Horizon earlier this week in Ultra HD Blu-ray, and I have to say, it's got one of the best Dolby Atmos soundtracks I've ever heard.
Yeah, but doesn't make it a good film, though, Steve? This is
let me just preface that by saying it's a good film too. It does a very good job of setting up what how these drilling platforms actually work. Because I got to admit, I don't know much about it, and they set it out very well. They explain it all in very easy and simple to understand terms, and then having set up the characters, set up the situation, they then deliver the accident itself, and absolutely some of the best destruction. And action / disaster sequences I've ever seen committed to film. Marky Mark is actually really good in it, playing sort of everyman. Kurt Russell, always worth watchable. John Malkovich is in it as a very slimy BP executive. And the Dolby Atmos soundtrack is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Once all hell breaks loose and you're inside the Deepwater Horizon, the sounds are coming from everywhere, and you really do feel like you're in the middle of it. And I think the director Peter Berg did a really good job of delivering this story in a faithful way that's respectful to people that died and tells you what happened and why. If you want to demo this to show off Atmos, this is the one to get. I'm not kidding. It's bloody amazing. And interestingly, the other thing I did check out, because this is something that people probably don't necessarily think about much, but the opening sequence of the film is an underwater shot where they go down to the base of the drilling platform, where the drill's going into the seabed, because what they do is they put concrete around it to create a sort of plug. And they show this shot of the submersible going down towards a sort of point of view shot through the water. Now, on the Blu-ray, there's so much banding in that because it's 8-bit. But on the Ultra HD Blu-ray, which is 10-bit, it's completely free of banding. So that was a good demonstration of what difference 8-bit to 10-bit can actually make, as an aside. In terms of other Blu-ray releases this week, there's Free State of Jones, which is the new film from Matthew McConaughey, which has had quite good reviews, set during the American Civil War, I think it is. Also got Bridget Jones's Baby, which I know maybe not everyone's cup of tea, but did have quite good reviews when it came out. And I do actually like the original Bridget Jones's Diary. I think that's really funny. That's out this week. We've also got Raising Cain, which is a new reissue, remastered and restored of Brian De Palma's film Raising Cain with John Lithgow, which I quite like, even if it is a bit Hitchcocky and one of his Hitchcock rip-offs. It's still quite good fun. And we've also got the third season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which was a good season. I watched it was on TV last year, and that's probably worth checking out if you're a fan of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Marvel films in general. Ultra HD Blu-rays, have they released anything decent yet, Steve? Well, they did release Resident Evil Apocalypse, so if that's something you like. And obviously Deepwater Horizon, which I just mentioned. Coming up, new announcements. The Oscars were announced, the nominations were announced this week, and La La Land got 14 nominations.
Have you been to see it yet?
I haven't, no. I do want to see it, I just haven't had time.
Yeah, I've had the soundtrack on in the car testing this new audio system, and I've got to say one of the most dynamic soundtracks I've heard for a while in terms of the recording. If you get a chance, it's on Tidal, Ed and Steve, and well worth checking out. It's a bit jazzy, but I've got to say I quite like the songs, and it doesn't outstay its welcome.
I've been holding off from listening to it. This is going to sound ridiculous, but I am, once it really kicks in, the number of times I'm going to hear the songs sung with varying degrees of proficiency by my wife's pupils meant that I thought I'd save that surprise for a little bit later on. It's in the same way that I didn't bother watching Frozen. I know all the words to Let It Go, because I've heard it a couple of times.
Yeah, I've never bothered with that film, just because I don't like that song. It's just I've never bothered with it. But no, the soundtrack. There's 2 soundtrack albums. There's the instrumental album done by the composer, and then there's also the album with the songs on. The one with the songs, absolutely brilliant. I mean, the dynamics, the way they've recorded it, it's really, really, really good. Really, I think it'll be demo material.
Right. Well, I mean, that's interesting because, like I said, I haven't seen it yet, Phil. I do want to see it. I also want to see Trainspotting 2 and Resident Evil, the final chapter. But yes, La La Land, 40 nominations, which is a record. It equals the record set by All About Eve and Titanic. And it's being prepped for an Ultra HD Blu-ray release. So that should be great when it does come out. They're also, on the 11th of April, it looks like we're going to be getting Fantastic Beasts and where to find them on Ultra HD Blu-ray. And apparently Warner's are also prepping the Harry Potter films to tie in with that release on Ultra HD Blu-ray. But I think La La Land is something I'm definitely interested in. In 2 weeks' time, in the US at least, Arrival gets released on Ultra HD Blu-ray, which I'm very much looking forward to. And that also did quite well in the Oscar nominations as well. Although Amy Adams didn't get a nomination, which I'm very surprised at because she's fantastic in Arrival. Yeah. And basically the whole film hangs around her.
Yeah, I've got to see it again. It's one of those that I left the cinema and I was still thinking about it 4 days later. But unfortunately just didn't have the time to go back and have a second viewing, and I think it really needs a second viewing, that film. Lots of interesting theories going on in that, so I think it definitely needs a second or a third viewing. So yeah, I'll probably pick that up on UHD. It's a 4K DI, isn't it?
I think it is, yes. I think it is a 4K DI, but interestingly, it did not have an Atmos mix at the cinema, so I think it's just a 7.1 mix on the disc.
Oh, hell. I'm not going to buy it then. If I'm missing that ceiling track, I'm not going to buy it. Yeah, looking forward to that one. And I've got to say, Trainspotting, that as we record that is released today. I'm going to try and get along. I'm going to try and edit this podcast. Wish me luck, and then maybe try and get along and see an early showing before it gets too busy.
Yeah, me too. If I get a chance to get this weekend. Although I'm supposed to be going to some Burns night thing on Saturday, which I could do now.
It's haggis, tatters, and neeps.
That bit's fine.
It's the incomprehensible gibbering, which is more of a challenge.
Burns poetry, I could do that.
Yeah, I can understand it.
Give over. It's one of those things where people pretend to enjoy it.
Actually, Ed, there are people out there that do enjoy it.
I suppose there are people out there that enjoy D.H. Lawrence as well.
There's people in this world. There's people in this world that enjoy Resident Evil films. So
this is true.
There's a niche for everybody.
In 200 years' time, I look forward to Resident Evil nights. They're going to be brilliant.
Listen, having had to sit through quite a lot of your music collection in the back of a car when we were in Vegas, I think most of the stuff you got crap.
You can f*** off, and once you f*** off, you can f*** off a bit more.
Oh, I was waiting until you had the safety of Skype to say that, Steve.
It was hardly. Where were the Skinny White Boys on guitar? No guitar bands at all. It's just a complete lack of that.
Let's just face it, right? When Stock Aitken and Waterman stopped making music, that was it. It was dead after that.
Well, that was it for Withers anyway, yeah.
Rick Astley's biggest fan, weren't you, Steve?
No comment.
Well, presumably you're enjoying his new album.
Has he got a new album out?
Yes. God. Actually,
Jeez,
do you know what?
It's been number one for a while.
Quite a good little body of music. You know, it doesn't really, rewrite anything that you thought Rick Astley was capable of, but it's a good thing.
Look, last year, Ed, I bought Black Star. I bought the Kate Bush live album Before the Dawn, and this year so far I've bought the Lazarus soundtrack. The cast recording from Bowie's musical. That's it.
Fair enough.
I stopped buying new stuff in about 1995. So.
You got to keep pushing. You've got to keep pushing because there is good stuff out there. And joking aside, I fully appreciate that my musical taste is not your musical taste, but there is still stuff that would appeal to you. You've got, I mean, the thing is, I know obviously it would require you to run 2 streaming services subscription, but Spotify's Discover Weekly is astonishing for that. If you just plumb in, if you spend a couple of days listening to stuff that you like, so put the Bowie in, put the your Skinny White Boys through, and Rick Astley, and it will then start plowing through that, and it will make suggestions. Now, some of them you'll go, oh yeah, I've heard that, it's all right. Other things it will bring to your attention that you had no idea they existed, and it will start costing you a fortune, like it does me.
Actually, to be fair, Ed, I did get into M83 thanks to you, sir.
Well, there we go. You see, so backhanded compliment right there.
Right, okay, so we need to do our favourite discs and TV shows of the month. So TV shows of the month, I haven't watched anything in January.
I'll tell you what I've been watching. It's the second season. It's still on right now. It's on Channel 4. It's called No Offense. Written by, who's the guy that wrote Shameless? Paul Thingy. Got his name now. The guy that wrote Shameless. It's a police drama, Phil. I think you'd really enjoy it because it's, obviously been well researched in terms of how cops operate, but it's also really, really funny and really exciting. And I'm really enjoying season 2, and I really enjoyed season 1 as well. So if you haven't checked it out yet, check out No Offense on Channel 4. I think it's Wednesday nights. I think it's a fantastic show, and it's got a brilliant lead performance from Joanna Scanlon as the main copper in it. But all the cast are good, and the guy that's the forensic scientist in it is absolutely hysterical. He's brilliant too. So please, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's set in Manchester, as I guess a lot of his stuff is.
Okay. I find it for January it's been a bit strange in terms of TV series and stuff that's normally on, because there's no Have I Got News for You, there's no Mock the Week at the minute, there's no Wheeler Dealers, Ed, no Air Crash Investigation.
There is Air Crash Investigation. That's restarted.
Has it?
Yeah.
Oh, I've missed it then. When did it restart?
It was the Andreas Lubitz thing last Monday. That was depressing.
Was it? Oh, right.
Yeah. It wasn't, in so much as you knew what happened pretty much from the outset. And normally, I have to be honest, this is a really strange one, because normally when they do reconstructions of the accidents themselves, they don't hide the fact that there are usually minors and small children on the plane. They very rarely make a big deal of them unless they survive. This unusually played heavily on a small weeping child as they just slammed into the side of a mountain. Now, you can't. There's no sense denying that a number of very young people did die on the flight thing, but it was sort of very, very in your face. It was most unsettling. But yeah, there is another one this Monday, so I don't know exactly which one it is, but get stuck in.
You see, that's a problem with the BT thing, because you don't get you don't get the iPlayer type thing where you can go back and watch it. So no. unless there's a repeat on during the day,
I'll check for you.
I'll have missed that one now, which is a shame. But if it's Monday nights, that's grand, because Monday nights are starting to become good again. Because like I say, Fast and Loud's back on Monday. But anyway,
are you winding me up on this one?
No. Why would I be winding you?
All these new Discovery Channel things. It's like, yeah, thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Hey, well, get your MP to speak to Rupert. Right. So, favourite discs, Steve, and once again, I haven't had a chance to look at anything, but I think if I was to buy one, it would be Selley.
Well, I mean, I was going to say Ed segued in this one nicely, because absolutely, Selley is my disc of the month. Absolutely, I watched it initially on the JVC, and it looked stunning. The Atmos soundtrack, because obviously they're trying to structure a film around the fact that the actual event lasts for 208 seconds, but they do it if you've seen it, right, Phil, they do it in a really clever way, because they sort of initially show you what could have gone wrong. Then they show you the sort of the event from the point of view of the pilots, then the point of view of the passengers, and the point of view of the air traffic control, and then at the very end they actually play the voice box recording and the cockpit recording, and they kind of replay the whole event as it was from the point of view of the pilots, with some other aspects thrown in. I think that's really well structured, but the soundtrack really puts you in that plane during the actual landing on water, which is really good. And the image quality, because it was shot at 6.5K, finished at 4K. I was watching some of it on the Philips, and the level of detail in that image was stunning. I mean, you could see every tiny, little pore of skin and every blotch on Tom Hanks's face, every whisker, everything. It's just a staggering level of detail. And they do recreate the crash brilliantly in terms of the effects and the recreation on the water and everything like that. So, yeah, I thought it was a superb film, really well directed by Clint Eastwood, who's in his mid-80s now.
Yeah.
Great performance from Tom Hanks.
But the only thing is about Eastwood is he's very anti-government body, and I didn't think they were particularly fair on the NTSB because obviously myself and Ed, I've seen the Miracle in the Hudson air crash investigation type stuff a few times, and it's and that's always fair and square right down the middle. It has to be legally because they can't infer or make inferences and so on. It has to be the legal case that they show. Whereas in the film, they really did make a big thing of the NTSB being the bad guys, and I just thought that was the wrong way to play that. They could have still, they have to look at it, so they could have still used that drama. He didn't have to make them out to be the bad guys, though, and I felt that was the only misstep of that whole film.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know they did it to add some more a dramatic element to the film, but I think landing on water was quite dramatic enough, in my opinion. They didn't need to make villains out of the NTSB, which they did to a certain degree. And that is the one aspect of the film I do have a slight complaint about. But in all the other aspects of it, technically and in terms of performances, it's stunning. And as a disc, as I say, it's the best looking and sounding disc I've seen to date in Ultra HD Blu-ray. So if you're looking for something to get for your system, buy it.
Good stuff. Right, so to wrap up quickly, been a couple of developments when it comes to Star Wars, and everybody knows that the AVForums podcast revolves around a galaxy far, far away. So, 2 bits of news, Steve.
Yeah, Rogue One has passed the $1 billion mark at the global box office. It's already the number one film from last year in the States. It's made over $500 million there. It's currently sitting 4th worldwide. It will probably end up either first or possibly second. It might not actually get past Captain America Civil War in terms of global box office, but it's definitely going to be at least second. Obviously, that's a big difference from The Force Awakens. I mean, if Rogue One ends up making about $1.1 billion worldwide, The Force Awakens made $2 billion worldwide. But clearly, there was a lot more anticipation for that film, and there was a huge advertising and marketing campaign attached to it. Yeah,
plus it's had its home format releases and stuff as well to add on to that.
Yeah. So that did make a bit more money, but even so, I think Rogue One has done extremely well. If you look, and obviously Disney couldn't give a monkeys, because if you look at the top 5 films worldwide, they're all Disney movies. It's Captain America, Marvel, Disney, then Rogue One, Lucasfilm, Disney. Then you've got Zootopia, which is Disney. You've got Finding Dory, which is Pixar, and Jungle Book, which is Disney. So they've had a cracking year in terms of box office. And I'm glad to see it's been successful there, because obviously they were taking a little bit of a risk with Rogue One. I mean, it is a slightly different approach, but I think it's paid off both critically and commercially. So that's good news.
Okay, and episode 8 gets a new title, which immediately said to me, as soon as I read that, I thought, oh, that means Luke's dead.
Well, Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, is interesting for a number of reasons. I mean, clearly you're thinking, okay, well, Luke is the last Jedi, I guess, based upon what happened in The Force Awakens. And the Episode 8 does begin exactly where Force Awakens ended. It starts where that film ended. So that's different from previous Star Wars films. It's always happened a bit later, a few years later even. So that's interesting. But it's worth remembering that Jedi is the plural. That Jedi is both the singular and plural of the word Jedi. So it doesn't necessarily mean there's just one Jedi. It could be the last Jedi plural rather than just the last Jedi singular. And obviously we would assume...
But surely it would be the last of the Jedi.
Well, it could be the last Jedi. I'm going to assume that Luke's going to train Rey as a Jedi now. That would seem a reasonable assumption.
Well, that could be the assumption, but what it could actually be is the last Jedi is actually Kylo Ren.
Did you see on Reddit, just to cheer you up on this, that having announced this name, there was someone going, well, that clearly means that episode 9 is going to be called From His Nap. So when all read together, it's The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi from His Nap. Which I thought was mildly amusing, rather than arguing over the plural of Jedi, which is not.
It's interesting to see. I mean, episode 8 is written and directed by Rian Johnson, who's done some interesting work in the past. I'm hoping it's going to be a lot more original than The Force Awakens. It's got all the original, all the cast are back. Obviously, Carrie Fisher filmed her scenes last year, so that will be her last performance as ever. But everyone else is back too. Plus, we've got some new additions to the cast. Benicio del Toro's joined the cast, and Laura Dern. What their roles are is a closely guarded secret, but I can assume they're obviously going to flog the arse out of Rogue One until the disc comes out in April. Then in May, we've got the 40th, believe it or not, the 40th anniversary of the release of the original Star Wars. So 25th of May, 77, 25th of May, 2017. So that's going to be a big date. I expect around that time, either around May the 4th or the convention, etc., we're going to see the first trailer for Last Jedi. And then obviously it all starts again. And Ed will have to listen to me and Phil going on about Star Wars as we run into the December the 15th release of Episode 8.
Anyway, I think that's about all we got time for this week on the podcast. So my thanks to Steve Withers.
I've been a bad, bad girl.
And Ed Selley.
You're going to have to work for your meal.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums for latest reviews, news and video, and of course, leave us those 5-star ratings on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.